Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is B.J. Boyer. That is my guy, Alec Walt. We are back for the second episode of Society Sitdowns, bringing you hot takes, hot topics, and hot debates. We will be joined later by our guy, Justin Kirkland. And tonight we're going to be talking about two main topics. We're going to be talking about, obviously, the blockbuster Kyrie Irving, Isaiah Thomas deal that went down. And we'll also be discussing the best and worst newcomers of this offseason. So let's not waste any time. Let's hop right into this thing. Alec, with you being a Celtics fan, tell me, what did you feel the moment you saw that you guys acquired Kyrie Irving? And there goes our guy, Justin. What's up, Jay Kirk? How you doing, fan?
Yeah, sorry, some technical difficulties getting in. I had to accept like privacy terms and conditions and all of that. But hey, here I am, right?
Yeah, we in the house. So I'm asking
Yeah.
Walt. I'm asking Walt how, as a Celtics fan, he felt once he saw that the Kyrie Irving trade was official. So go ahead, Walt. Give us your thoughts.
I got a pretty small apartment. I was doing all the running that I could. My neighbors that live at home are probably not too happy right now. But this trade had to be done. I like what Danny Ainge was thinking. I think the Nets pick will determine who won the trade or not because we don't know what pick it's going to be. But you look at Isaiah Thomas. He hurt his hip in the offseason, or he hurt his hip in the playoffs, something that was bothering him throughout ended up bothering him to the point where he couldn't continue the rest of the Cleveland Cavaliers series. And Danny Ainge did not trust that. Yeah, it was something that made him very nervous throughout the entire offseason. Cleveland also didn't have a GM, which is why I think this trade took so long to do. But Isaiah Thomas was fifth in the NBA last year in usage rate with his hip. He wasn't going to do it again. And I think Kyrie Irving has the ability to pick up that slack. Of course, with acquiring Marcus Morris, there was way too much depth on the roster. So now Brad Stevens can go into training camp with roles defined for the rest of the roster. So I like the trade. They needed to trim the roster. They needed to get a star player. They did exactly that with this trade. Then again, if the Nets get the number one overall pick, I think it's going to definitely be Cleveland won the trade. But by the offseason, who knows if Isaiah Thomas or LeBron James will still be on the team.
Justin, what do you think? If you had to pick a winner of this trade, who would you go with?
I'm going to say Cleveland. I mean, but it really just depends what happens. Like, Cleveland definitely, to me, this year in this moment is the better team. You've got LeBron now. Now you've got, if we're all building up for who's, how you're going to take down the Warriors, you have your big body now, Jay Crowder. So now LeBron doesn't have to expend as much energy on the defensive end trying to guard Kevin Durant. You could throw Jay Crowder at him. You get Isaiah Thomas, who still gives you a lot of what Kyrie does. And I think he'll be, even more suited to playing off the ball. LeBron will be allowed to dominate the ball more as he's used to. I don't think you're going to see Isaiah Thomas average as many shots as what Kyrie did last year. So in this moment, I think the Cavs got younger. I think they got deeper. I think they got better on defense. Whereas the Celtics, I think that Jay Crowder loss is going to hurt. And I think that that Nets pick might have been a bit too much. And that remains to be seen. But I think in this moment, the Cavaliers are better, but the Celtics also set themselves up for future success, especially since they probably did not want to pay Isaiah Thomas the kind of money that he's going to demand, and they figure they've got a pretty good young rookie in Jason Tatum. So you take Hayward and Tatum and a younger Kyrie Irving, and you go from there.
Yeah, I love this trade just because there's so many different layers to it. You guys both touched on it. Isaiah Thomas is due for a contract extension next summer, and he wants the max. We've heard him say he expects that Brinks truck to pull up. We know what he wants, but there are challenges that come with paying such a small point guard $30 million a year, especially as he heads into his 30s. And then you have the whole Brooklyn pick fiasco and how that helps Cleveland. It gives them amazing flexibility in terms of if they want to trade or put another young prospect with LeBron for one more big title push, or if LeBron happens to leave and they don't re-sign Isaiah, they can hit reset right away with the top 5 and probably top 3 prospect. And what I love is how Danny Ainge finally just pulled the trigger. We've always heard about the Celtics stockpiling these assets, the war chest of assets that they had. He finally opened it and relinquished some. And it remains to be seen what price Boston is going to pay for giving up that pick. Obviously, like you said, Justin, I agree. Their defense is going to soften a little bit with no Crowder and no Avery Bradley as he was traded to Detroit earlier in the summer. But I like the defensive potential of Jaylen Brown a lot. We saw what I like the most is we saw him switch on to LeBron in several instances in the Eastern Conference Finals last year. And as a rookie, he didn't cower away. He didn't shy away. He embraced it. And that's the only way to get better. He's obviously very long and athletic. And I think that can translate into him being a quality defender. Can he reach elite status? That remains to be seen. But like you said, Boston sets themselves up perfectly for the future. Kyrie's only 25. They can convince him to sign there long term. They have a very, very good young blend of younger guys and then young guys. So I think it's interesting what's brewing in Boston. Seriously.
Well, if you look at the way the NBA is transitioned nowadays, it's small ball offensive an oriented league. The thing is, the Celtics played small ball, but with Isaiah Thomas, he was so small he needed to be surrounded by defensive-minded players to pick up the slack on the end of the court. And the thing is, with Kyrie Irving, he's a little bit better defensively. He's 6'3". Of course, he's not the best defensive player in the world, but you're screwed if you don't have the rest of the team with defensive-minded players. The thing is, they still have guys like Jaylen Brown, as you mentioned, Marcus Morris, Al Horford, Marcus Smart. The Celtics did lose a lot of defense, but they're not under as much pressure to have such solid defensive guys because Isaiah is no longer on the court. I think now that with Gordon Hayward and Kyrie Irving, they can play that small ball offensive game, but still have players that are decent enough on defense if they need to stop. And that's what really hurt Isaiah, is he was never on the court when they needed him. He was king of the fourth, but they were down with a minute left. He wasn't on the court. So now the Celtics play a guy like Gordon Hayward, who's relatively decent on defense, and can give you that offensive production later in games if they need a big three when down by 2.
Yeah. No, I think there's definitely something to that. I think what I'm most interested in seeing is Kyrie Irving, I think for the first time in his career, is going to be expected to be the playmaker. Now, we know things didn't go so great in the pre-LeBron days, but he was much younger then. So now for the first time in his, mature, coming into his own career, he's going to have to make plays. He's going to have to be the primary ball handler, and he's going to have to create shots not only for himself, but others as well. So I just wonder, this is what he wanted. He wanted to be, the debate whether he's the best player on the team or whether Hayward is the best player on the team. But he's going to have to create those opportunities, and that's something that he does.
Yeah, for me, I was talking to our guy Martin yesterday, and I said this kind of reminds me. People might kill me for this, but this kind of reminds me of like the Kobe question. Now, obviously, there's a huge difference between the game of Kobe and Kyrie Irving. Kobe was lauded as one of the 10 best players in the NBA during his time with Shaq. He was a way better all-around player, distributor, defender. But what I mean, this is like the Kobe question is, Kobe played with Shaq, probably the best player in the game at the time and the most dominant player. They won 3 championships. They couldn't coexist because of their egos. They clashed. Kyrie Irving is one of the most dynamic scoring point guards in the NBA today. He played with LeBron James, the most dominant player in the game and the most clear-cut best player in the world as it stands today. They could not coexist. When Shaq was traded to Miami, Kobe was trash. He's selfish. He's a ball hog. He's egotistical. He's uncoachable. They threw every negative superlative at Kobe. And he was either to go one or two ways. He was to use it as fuel and become greater than he was considered, or he was to kind of taper off and become what everybody anticipated he would become post Shaquille O'Neal. Now, is Kyrie Irving going to answer the call and lead one of the most storied franchises in the NBA? Or is he going to go the opposite way? And are we going to be like, wow, he really should regret requesting a trade from the Cavaliers and not wanting to play with LeBron James? So that's why I say this is, to me, the Kobe question repeated. Which way is it going to go for Kyrie? We obviously know he has to improve on his leadership and his playmaking. And most people are doubting him, and I'm probably one of those people. I don't know if he can really take the reins of the team as a point guard. He loves isolation ball. But I'll tell you what, I'm intrigued to see if he can accomplish it. And I'm rooting for him to accomplish it, because who doesn't want to see somebody as good as Kyrie Irving become even better and lead? I mean, even though I'm a Lakers fan, even though I'm a Lakers fan, it would be cool to see Kyrie lead the Celtics and put them back on that championship map.
One of the reasons why I think he has the chance to do that is because of the coaching. Brad Stevens is the best young coach in basketball. He has everyone since I've been in Boston, I don't know of everyone, but you really don't hear many complaints about him from the players in the locker room. I mean, Brad Stevens is a guy who's always ready for any situation. And I think having that mind and Kyrie having that confidence in his coach is going to be huge for him taking that next step.
I agree. I think the coaching is huge. Brad Stevens can unlock a lot of things out of a lot of different players, and I'm interested to see what he can pull out of Kyrie Irving. What haven't we seen yet? And I know for a fact that after last year's finals, after this trade request, after everything that's been said, Kyrie is busting his hump this summer to get better, to add multiple layers to his game, and I can't wait to see him show it off. I think Stevens is going to get very inventive between, like you said, small ball lineups, Irving and Hayward pick and rolls, Irving and Horford pick and roll. So I think there's a lot of potential to be unlocked with Kyrie Irving in Boston. It's just about him buying in and playing team basketball. I saw a stat on Twitter that documented the number of isolations of both Thomas and Irving last year, and I think Kyrie almost had like close to double. He was definitely at 100 more. I don't know if it exactly was double, but it was inching towards being the double. And he'll have to break those habits to play the type of team-oriented basketball that Stevens kind of emphasizes in Boston.
I think Stevens will definitely let him play iso ball in the fourth quarter because he did let Isaiah do it a lot. But what is going to help is that since he's not the greatest playmaker, he's got four other guys in his starting lineup that are great at passing, that can create shots for other people. Al Horford's one of the most underrated passers in the NBA, and I think if Horford can help Irving get open and them all help each other out and move the ball around, Horford's a great glue guy, puts everyone in position, and that's another guy. It's basically Brad Stevens on the court, and that's something considering Horford for a very long time. And that's just another added bonus to Kyrie potentially being successful in Boston.
Very true, Walt. Very true. So now I want to ask you guys, obviously the Kyrie trade kind of I wouldn't say derailed us, but we had an agenda for this show, and obviously the Kyrie trade that takes top priority. So now we're going to get into what we originally planned to talk about, which is, and it kind of coincides with the Kyrie trade because him and Isaiah are both newcomers to their respective teams. So who is your best newcomer from this past offseason and why? So we're looking at Chris Paul to Houston, Paul George to OKC, Jimmy Butler to Minnesota, and Gordon Hayward to Boston. So who would you consider out of that group to be the best newcomer and why?
I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say, and I'm a Bulls fan, so I might have a little bias here, but I'm going to say Jimmy Butler to Minnesota, and here's why. You're bringing in Jimmy Butler and you're bringing in Taj Gibson as well, kind of two veterans from the old Tom Thibodeau regime to reunite with who? Tom Thibodeau. So, you have a good young nucleus in Minnesota now. You bring over a Jeff Teague who's a solid point guard, has been for his entire career. So you've answered that question at point guard that Ricky Rubio kind of didn't fit into. And you've got Karl Anthony Towns, who's one of the best young players in the league. I think he's going to be a future superstar for years to come. So adding Jimmy Butler and adding Taj Gibson, and I think that'll allow Andrew Wiggins to be a little bit more free. We might see Andrew Wiggins come a little bit into his own now as more of a number 3 or number 4 option, as opposed to having, such high expectations planted on him like it was when he first came out of college. So I think Jimmy Butler will bring like that poise and that leadership, and more importantly, that defensive tenacity that Tom Thibodeau couldn't really implement during the start of his time there.
I like that. How about you, Walt?
I'm going to have to agree because I don't exactly know how Paul George and Russell Westbrook or Chris Paul and James Harden are going to mold. One thing I know is Tom Thibodeau and Jimmy Butler do know how to mold. They've done it before. They were very successful in Chicago, and that's a relationship that we know is going to be successful. Now, again, with defense, Minnesota didn't play defense at all. They're a team that we were expecting to make that next jump. Did look a little bit better than they did last year, but again, what killed them is they would score points, but they would never stop the other team from scoring. If this team wants to make it into the Western Conference playoffs, especially this year, they're going to have to play defense. Now they have Jimmy Butler, even Jeff Teague, that can cover the best two backcourt players on the roster. Even Jimmy Butler is so versatile he can cover wings. Taking that defensive pressure off of Wiggins can unleash them, and that should scare the Western Conference.
I like both of those answers, but I'm going to have to go with Chris Paul to Houston, and I'll tell you why. I am just absolutely – I can't wait to watch Chris Paul and James Harden because I think there's potential for an incredible amount of success, and I also think there's a lot of potential for some turmoil and some beef. You're talking about Chris Paul. He's hyper-competitive, kind of pushy. We heard reports about how Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan were kind of annoyed with him. And we saw that clip of Harden and Chris Paul playing at the Drew League, and Chris Paul is telling Harden, yo, take the layup. And Harden's busy getting his jig on. Like, I wonder what's going to happen when the season unfolds. I wonder if we'll have more of those type of moments. I think that it could happen. And I think that these are two guys. We see them spending a lot of time together. And a part of me wants to think, it's genuine. A lot of guys seem to like James Harden. They call him a real one. We've seen him hanging out with Meek Mill and this person and that person. But a part of me has to wonder, is it kind of forced? Like, are they forcing this cohesion, hanging out and playing at the Drew League together, and Chris Paul showing up at James Harden weekend in Houston? So I want to see how those two mesh. Obviously with those two guys, there will always be an elite ball handler and distributor on the floor. And that bodes very well for Houston, who loves to shoot threes. It'll alleviate some pressure off of Harden from having to have the ball in his hands literally at all times and be the only one capable and allowed quarterback in the offense in Houston. But I want to see how these two guys mesh. Chris Paul, he's been at it for so long, and we've yet to see a decline. And I thought last year, maybe the first year we saw a decline in Chris Paul, but it didn't happen. And now playing along James Harden, will that prolong his career? Or may we see some of that drop off this season? So I just want to see how that dynamic works out. And let's face it, these two guys, Harden has been there with OKC, but as the men on their respective teams, they're conference finals versions. So can they finally get over that hump together? Or are they doomed? Are they tailored for an epic meltdown in the second round? We've seen them, that happened to both of them on numerous occasions. So I want to see what happens down in Houston. So that would probably be my pick, Chris Paul.
No, I could definitely get behind that. I definitely think Chris Paul and James Harden have the highest ceiling of all, the new pairs and, things of that nature. I think OKC is still going to have issues with their supporting cast. I think, I haven't seen OKC have a system even with Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook. So I don't expect that to change with Paul George and Russell Westbrook. I don't think there's going to be any difference there. But bringing a Chris Paul over to an already high-powered and efficient offense is only going to do wonders for them. I know Trevor Ariza is somewhere in an empty gym somewhere shooting, corner threes, because that's all he's going to be doing this year. I know he's going to love that. I just really, I think they have the highest ceiling. It's going to be interesting to see James Harden back off of the ball. I know he, had exciting moments as a point guard last year, but he also, along with Russell Westbrook, broke a league record for turnovers, so the optics weren't always great on that. So bringing a true point guard back into the fold and allowing James Harden to play off the ball, I definitely think they have the highest ceiling. If James Harden was interested in playing some defense at some point in time, who knows, they really can make a run. Chris Paul was catching alley-oops the other day too. So, he might have a little bit of juice left in those legs. We don't know.
He might have
a little juice left in those legs. I was looking on YouTube. I was like, all right, so we might have something cooking down there in Houston. We'll see.
He got that vibe. So I want to flip the script now. So what's an addition that has you shaking your head like, what's going on right now? So I'm thinking, maybe Dwight to Charlotte, Tim Hardaway Jr. signing that real big contract in New York, Rondo to New Orleans, D Rose to Cleveland. Obviously, it doesn't have to be one of those, but those are just some examples. So Walt, go ahead, shoot it off. What what was an addition you was like, huh?
Well, at the time when Derrick Rose signed with the Cavs were saying that they needed depth and they needed to stay healthy. Well, Derrick Rose gives you depth, but he doesn't give you health. And I don't like this pickup because I don't think in the playoffs he's going to be there. If LeBron wants that roster that's going to be running on full cylinders come playoff time, he can't expect that Rose is going to be there because he hasn't played a full season in about 6 years. For the Cavaliers that are trusting to build a roster to give LeBron one more year, and again, they did just get Isaiah Thomas and Jay Crowder, but I'm saying at the time with this Rose, I still don't think Rose is going to be there at the playoffs. There's no way that, if you're trying to pitch LeBron to stay, you get Derrick Rose. This isn't 2009 anymore. This isn't 2010, 2017. And he will not be there come playoff time, and I thought that was an awful pickup.
Damn, Walt, you sound upset, bro. Derrick Rose hurt you or something?
If I'm a general manager, I want LeBron James to stay one more season, and your way to pitch him is Derrick Rose? Come on.
What's worse, Derrick Rose or Jose Calderon? Sheesh.
Yeah, that's the third one. They gave him – they tried to improve their depth, and they did not do a very good job doing it.
I'm going to have to go with Rondo, and not because I think Rondo's a bad player. We saw some flashes last year in Chicago. Obviously, him getting hurt changed the entire complexion of that playoff series. But I'm going to go with Rondo just because of the way I hear New Orleans plans to utilize him. They want to play him and Drew Holiday together. Well, are y'all interested in winning basketball games, or do you want DeMarcus Cousins to leave? Like, what's going on with that? Hearing that just had me scratching my head. The Tim Hardaway Jr., the contract is obviously bad, but I'm a believer in the guy. I remember when he got traded to Atlanta, I tweeted on our account. I was like, Tim Hardaway Jr. is going to do some nice things with the Hawks. And somebody replied like LMAO, mocking me, trying to get me out of there or whatever. But he did some things in Atlanta. He showed that he's capable of scoring the ball pretty effectively. And now obviously playing in New York with that big, contract attached, the pressure is going to be on. The pressure is going to be on him to perform. But I think that he's a competitor. He's up to the challenge. And I look forward to seeing him embracing it all and trying to trump everybody's expectations. So how about you, Justin? Who would you say was the newcomer that had you kind of confused?
I'm actually going to counter you. First of all, with the Rondo addition of Rondo and Drew Holiday, what has Buddy Hield done to give you confidence that he should be starting? Drew Holiday played, the two guard last year, and no, that's not your first pick, but Buddy Hield, can't guard a stop sign, and he didn't even show the true shooting prowess that we expected him to have coming out of Oklahoma. So I'm still waiting on Buddy Hield. So Drew Holiday needs to be starting until Buddy Hield proves he could do something. And hell, somebody has to be a point guard in there somewhere. I can't even. Who was their point guard last year when Drew moved to the two? Oh, some guy named Tim Frazier. Most people don't even know who Tim Frazier is. So come on now. He's a fun guy to use in 2K. Like if you expand your seasons 3 years into the future, but he didn't do anything last year. And the Pelicans stink. They have to do something. Anthony Davis' contract is going to be coming up soon. You have to have him have some good time in New Orleans besides his days off. But actually for the one I didn't like, I think the Knicks front office just sits around and goes, hey, what's the funniest thing we can do right now to stay relevant since we're bad? Oh, I know. We're going to go and re-sign the guy that we got rid of for $70 million. We're just going to bring him back. So here we go. We have Tim Hardaway Jr. again. I understand that he had a little bit of a career resurgence in Atlanta, but that's a product of him playing for a better coach and a better system with better teammates. So now he's back in the cesspool that is Madison Square Garden, where we're going to see more of the same. The Knicks just stink, and they're going to stink until they get rid of Carmelo Anthony. I'm sorry to Felix and anybody other Knicks fans who happen to be watching this, but Hoodie Melo does not translate to regular season basketball. It's only a Twitter superstar, and I just don't see why you waste that chunk of money on a guy who, he's just a slightly below all-star level player. He doesn't deserve that amount of money. I don't care how much money these guys are just giving out because of the new media contracts. You're a bad team. You can't afford to give away that type of money to guys who are unproven.
Especially when they already signed Joakim Noah to that hard contract. It makes
that's what I'm saying.
kind of compounds everything. So the Knicks got some figuring out to do with their money situation. I totally agree with that. But I want to take us to our last topic. And Justin, you kind of touched on this earlier. I wanted to ask you guys about a mid-tier to lower level free agent that, you know, signed with the team or whatever, that was kind of overlooked, you know, that a lot of people didn't talk about, or it's not being talked about as important of a signing. So an example would be like J.J. Redick to Philly, Zach LaVine to Chicago, Avery Bradley getting traded to Detroit, or Gallinari with the Clippers. And obviously, as before, it's not exclusive to those choices, just some examples. So, Walt, start us off. Who would yours be?
One of the biggest weaknesses of the Los Angeles Clippers, while Chris Paul was on the team, was they had no depth and they had no scoring wing. With Gallinari, they now do that. They now have a scoring wing, and they still have Patrick Beverley to play point guard. I think Gallo's going to do wonders for the Clippers. I don't think the Clippers are going to be as good because they don't have Chris Paul, but Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan finally have a guy that can space the floor and play multiple positions. And, I mean, he's going to average 19 to 21 points per game. That's just who he is. He's been doing it the last couple of years on the Denver Nuggets. But I feel like them finally having a guy that can score on the wing is going to be huge.
How about you, Justin? Who would you say?
I'm going to show my Chicago Bulls some love here. You know, I didn't, you know, at first, you know, and I still don't exactly love what they did, you know, but you trade Jimmy Butler away and you get a bag of Kit Kats in return. And then, you know, you're thinking about you're thinking about buying out D-Wade, you know, in the middle of the season. I heard those rumors, so D-Wade can make last run. So then you acquire a guy like Zach LaVine. You know, you don't spend $1 billion. This is a guy who has shown a high ceiling in the past if he could stay healthy. You know, you buy out D-Wade, you're bad for 2 or 3 seasons, and you pick up some draft picks, and you hope that, you know, a guy like a Lauri Markkanen works out. I think Denzel Valentine might be the slowest player I've ever seen, but hopefully he could, you know, maybe he could end up being something. So you just go completely with the young movement. So you got a bunch of young guys, you know, guys that can be exciting. Nikola Mirotic can't decide if he wants to be, you know, Brian Scalabrine or like, you know, like a more wing-oriented Paul Gasol. I guess he'll figure that out eventually. And you just figure things out with your young guys and, you know, some guy who used to be named Dwayne Wade until you get rid of Wade and you just, you know, move on forward. So I think, you know, I like the LaVine pickup. If he's healthy, if they're patient with him, you know, I think he's, you know, he could be an all-star level player in this league, and he's certainly exciting when he's at his best.
I'm going to side with Walt. I love Gallinari in Los Angeles. I think he's a case of the perfect player just at the wrong time. And when I say that, I mean, we knew the Clippers, always said this about the Clippers. They were a team trying to fly without wings, meaning their production on the wings. How many wing players did they go through in the Chris Paul era? They had Hedo Turkoglu, Danny Granger, Austin Rivers, Jamal Crawford, Paul Pierce, Bob Moute, Nick Young. I mean, that Wesley Johnson, that's just the tip of the iceberg. So we always knew they needed a third scoring option on the wing, somebody that can pass, rebound, alleviate the pressures off of Griffin and Paul. I always thought somebody like an Iguodala or Wilson Chandler or Gallinari would have been a perfect complement. And now they got their guy, but it came at the expense of Chris Paul leaving for Houston. So I'm going to go with Gallinari, but I also have another one, and I just realized that he signed there the other day. P.J. Tucker in Houston is what I love because his game is perfect for that team. Shoot corner threes and be tough-nosed and guard the other team's best player when needed. And he's going to help a lot, and he's going to get the best looks of his career in those corners. And he's not really a fantastic three-point shooter in other areas on the court from the wing or the top of the key. He's literally stationed in that corner all game long. And we know James Harden and Chris Paul are both going to find him, and they're going to rack up those assists. So I love P.J. Tucker down in Houston. I think that was a good pickup. And also one more, C.J. Miles to the Raptors is huge. It enables them to go small, gives them another shooting option. They're not a fantastic outside shooting team. They haven't been in the past. He's a knockdown shooter. He can handle the ball a little bit. Veteran, playoff experience. You know, he can steady DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry if they're to hit that playoff wall again. So I love those pickups. Those have to be my 3. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of time. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. from my man Alec Walt. We appreciate Justin the God for joining us for today's episode.
Absolutely.
We'll be back next week, 7 p.m. Eastern. New show, new topics, new debates. Society Sit Down. Be sure to be here. Tune in. Y'all be safe. Have a good weekend. And remember the name. Peace.